Will Deadpool 3 be the Hulk-sized shot in the arm the MCU needs, or will it be a cameo-filled mess with no substance? Let's talk about that in our predictions for what will arguably be the biggest movie of the summer. There's a lot riding on this one. Deadpool 3 is on the horizon, and a lot of people are looking at it to quote-unquote save the MCU. Now, I gotta be honest, I don't personally think the MCU needs saving. In fact, I would say that I've liked most of the post-Endgame content that we've gotten. Multiverse of Madness and No Way Home might honestly be two of my favorite MCU movies ever, and Eternals, I believe, is an entirely misunderstood masterpiece. I honestly think that movie gets better every time I watch it. But that doesn't mean that I don't see the cracks. So let's go over the state of the MCU currently. Endgame came out in 2019. That's 5 years ago. And I think everyone expected the MCU to catch its breath and have a couple more contained movies before we moved on to the next Endgame, as it were. But in that time, we really have no idea what our new end goal is. Kang was supposed to be something, but even before all the Jonathan Majors stuff happened, it seemed like they were struggling to communicate why. There's a dead Celestial in the middle of the ocean, and another one out there passing judgment on all of humanity, and we've had no update on that front. There are seemingly several ways the multiverse works, and probably the most egregious of all, we have no idea what the state of the Avengers is, and that was always our North Star of sorts in this whole journey. There are a lot of plates spinning, but it sort of feels like no one at Marvel HQ knows what to do with them. That's where Deadpool comes in. So, how exactly is the Merc with the Mouth going to save the once mighty MCU? And what can we maybe expect to happen in the movie? Let's get the big one out of the way, the trimming of some of these ongoing storylines. Remember those plates I mentioned? Well, I think some of those are going to start to get smashed, so to speak. There are a lot of ongoing storylines happening right now, and not everyone is crazy about all of them. I think Deadpool 3 is going to take advantage of the presence of the TVA and MCU elements like the incursions to trim a couple of these plots away. A lot of the MCU projects as of late have felt really disconnected from one another, so I feel like it would be easy enough to remove them and write it off as it taking place in another branch of time or universe of some sort. I think some condensing of the multiverse is inevitable, and the incoming Secret Wars provides a perfect excuse to trim the fat, as it were. Now, we may lose some stories and plots, but I do think we get some things, which brings me to my second prediction. This one is maybe the most obvious, but I think we're gonna finally get a canonical explanation for how mutants work in the MCU. Everyone has been waiting for this for a long time. Ever since the Disney-Fox merger, that has been the main question. How will mutants be folded into the MCU? With the presence of characters like Wolverine and Pyro in the movie, and confirmation that Namor and Ms. Marvel are indeed already existing mutants, the groundwork has slowly been laid, but we haven't really gotten a full explanation for anything. Have mutants existed all this time but laid secret? Is it something that's unlocked due to one of the many cosmic/magical events happening? Time will tell. My prediction is, ironically enough, they'll lift from the Inhumans and have some sort of Terrigen Mist type situation happen that awakens the X gene in people in the main MCU timeline. With all those new heroes, we need to learn who our new big bad is, which brings me to my third prediction. Like I mentioned before, even before the situation with Jonathan Majors blew up, I think the MCU is having a really hard time getting regular, more casual fans to understand why they should care about the presence of Kang. And they were already sort of starting to backtrack on him, I feel like. Now, as a comics fan, I was personally really pumped. Something that I think the MCU has been really great about is taking weird, obscure characters and introducing them to the masses in ways that are more accessible, but still keep the heart of those characters in place. With Kang, I think they finally met their match. I think with all the timeline smashing and incursioning that is likely to happen in Deadpool 3, I think we finally figure out who our new Thanos level baddie is, so to speak. Loki Season 2 presented them with the perfect out for Kang, and Hollywood Reporter confirmed back in February that Marvel Studios would be changing the name of Avengers Kang Dynasty, seemingly to distance themselves from both the character and Majors. My prediction? Our new bad is a character reacquired in the Fox merger. Marvel Studios seems to be placing a lot of emphasis on those characters in the years to come, so I wouldn't be surprised if it was someone like Doom, given how big of a role he plays in the 2015 Secret Wars, or if it was an X-Men villain like Apocalypse.
To a better one.
Hopefully not that one. Or Mr. Sinister. Those characters to me are a high enough threat that I could see them playing the required role they would need to in Secret Wars, while still being approachable enough to the masses. Now, with a big villain like that, we need a team to take them on. After all, the Secret Wars story carries a lot of weight for fans, so I think we finally figure out what the status of the Avengers is in Deadpool 3. At the end of Shang-Chi, it seemed like Wong was gathering what remained of the troops for something, but on the other hand, that dinner scene in Eternals sort of implied that the Avengers were no more. With Avengers Not Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars coming down the pipe soon, they need to start working quickly to let us know who our new team is. I think the likely scenario is that they continue off the thread of characters Wong has gathered like Bruce, Carol, and Shang-Chi, and add Wade into the mix, and we start building the rest of the team from there. We have already gotten evidence of a version of the Young Avengers / Champions coming, so maybe Kamala and Kate Bishop can get into the mix too. And you need characters for a team, so let's talk cameos and who we expect to show up. These are always one of the funnest parts of these movies, and given what we've heard already, I think Deadpool and Wolverine is going to be super fun in that aspect. Let's start with some that I think are pretty likely and then get silly with a couple. I mentioned him before, but Wong seems like a likely candidate. As Sorcerer Supreme, I feel like he's likely the most concerned with possible incursions and reality smashing. I wouldn't be surprised to see him or Doctor Strange show up in some way. In fact, I kind of feel like Wong is sort of our new Nick Fury. You know, just popping up, letting the new superheroes know that something's going on. And given that she's living in Kamartaj with her reality hopping powers, I feel like America Chavez could also pop up as well. That brings me to Wanda. Now, our main Wanda is dead, but let's not forget that there's a version of her alive in the timeline we visit in Multiverse of Madness. If that's the timeline that Monica got sent to at the end of the Marvels, then it's likely we could see that version of Wanda show up in this as a proper mutant this time. Professor X and Magneto. This one feels like pretty low-hanging fruit, and we have seen Professor X already in Multiverse of Madness, so I wouldn't be surprised if he showed up here, especially to give Logan some closure depending on which version of the character it is that we see. And if we truly are destroying, folding in, etc. the Fox universe into the MCU proper, then I think it would be nice to see the two of them again as some sort of send-off to that version of those characters. Laura / X-23. Similar to providing closure to Logan with Professor X, I think this one could also fill that role, and in fact, Daphne Keane is no stranger to Disney right now with her role in The Acolyte, so in a way, she's already been in contact with them, and I truthfully wouldn't be surprised if she's a character that maybe gets carried over into the MCU somehow. Depending on how long Wolverine ends up sticking around, he's gonna need a wayward daughter of some sort to take under his wing, and their time did get cut short in Logan. The crew from Loki. Now, given that the TVA plays a huge role in this movie and seems to be the major player for getting Deadpool into the MCU, I wouldn't be surprised if some of the characters from Loki make an appearance in this show. I'll be curious to see how helpful versus antagonistic they may be, given that by the end of Loki, the TVA had become a far less authoritarian organization, but also in the Deadpool trailer, we do see him killing TVA agents. And given that Loki is now the god of stories and is guarding all branches of the sacred timeline, I wouldn't be surprised if he shows up as well as an ally to Wade and Logan in some form, especially if the world or multiversal tree is in danger in some way. So those are some of my sort of safe and I would say likely options. Let's get silly with a few now. Josh Brolin as Thanos. I feel like this joke just writes itself. Thanos shows up and Wade makes some sort of joke about how he looks / sounds just like Cable. I feel like the crowd would lose it. It feels like such low-hanging fruit, and the MCU has already shown that they don't mind having some fun with Thanos now given his appearances in What If. Infinity Ultron. Now, I have to admit that at the time of writing this, I haven't watched What If Season 2 yet, so I have no idea if they've resolved this story, but still, the fact of the matter is that in my mind right now, there's an Ultron variant out there in the multiverse with a sick-ass cape and the Infinity Stones literally embedded into his body. I know I said our likely new bads were Doom or an X-Men villain, but as a huge Ultron fan, I would super welcome the return of the character, especially this version. Oh man, and what if the other What If characters show up, but they like Roger Rabbit it, where they're animated and the live action actors are still live action? They would never do that, but that would be hilarious, and if it was ever gonna happen, it would happen in a Deadpool movie. Venom. Now, hear me out. This is probably my least likely prediction. I understand that, but it's no secret that Sony's Spider-Man-less Spider-Man universe is kind of a shit show right now, with Venom being the only success that they've really had. And the weird state of whether or not this is canon or not to Tom's Spider-Man stuff just makes everything really muddled. What if there was a mutual agreement that this is where the franchises, not the companies, part ways for good? Tom and his version of Spidey can stay in the MCU, but whatever Sony has going on is it's firmly its own thing from now on. I imagine something like this would probably be saved for Venom Last Dance, but I mean, there is a piece of the symbiote in the main MCU timeline, so who knows? While editing this, I forgot that the Last Dance trailer shows them catching the symbiote piece, so I guess that wasn't in the main MCU timeline now, I guess. God, what a joke. I honestly can't wait for these movies to be done. My last and really Deadpooliest answer is Kevin Feige. Now, I know She-Hulk did a version of this, but that was a robot named Kevin. I'm talking about the actual Kevin Feige playing himself in some way. I don't know, maybe they have a conversation about needing to save the franchise or something. Like I said, She-Hulk basically already did a version of this, so unless they have a really, really good way to approach it, I doubt they'll do it. But I feel like if there's any movie that was ever gonna really acknowledge Kevin Feige as the architect of this insane media empire, a Deadpool movie would be the place for it. As I wrap this up, I just want to say how excited I am for this movie. If you asked me a few years ago if we would ever get to this point, I would probably say no. I know Deadpool as a character can be a little grating, but I've always had a lot of fun with him, and I really admired Ryan Reynolds' dedication to getting the character to the big screen. For as vulgar and obscene as the Deadpool movies can be, they also have a ton of heart behind them, and it truly feels like everyone working on them honestly really cares about the projects. I honestly think Deadpool 3 stands to be the craziest of them all, and as an MCU fan that's tried to take a more nuanced approach to my feelings for the franchise as of late, it's nice to see people excited about a project for the most part. What do you guys think is going to happen though? I feel like with a movie like this, there are so many possibilities, so there's no way that I can predict everything. So let me know in the comments what you're thinking, and if you liked the video, consider dropping a sub. Till next time, bye!